there is an invisible darkness pressing upon the human mind, a shadow born of fear for the future. No one can see it, yet it slips into every thought, every decision, every restless sleep. Humanity lives in anxiety over tomorrow, forgetting that the power to create lies fully within the present moment. This video is a journey that guides you through 16 layers of meaning, from recognizing your fears, understanding the law of sowing and reaping, practicing the golden key, listening to prophetic imagination and the voice of the inner self, to building a radiant tomorrow through gratitude and awakened consciousness. These are not mere philosophical ideas, but living principles capable of transforming the way you perceive life, allowing you to release the authority you have given to fear and begin living as a true creator. Introduction. The fear of the future is an invisible burden. There are things man can see and face with his eyes, and then there are things unseen, yet far heavier. The fear of the future belongs to the latter. It has no shape, it makes no sound, and it leaves behind no tangible trace. Yet it creeps into every thought, stains every dream, and weighs upon the heart even when nothing has happened. People wake in the morning, and before they even begin the day, their minds have already painted scenes of collapse, of loss, of failure. Will I keep my job? Will my health decline? Will money lose its value? Will my family remain at peace? These questions, like shadows, obscure the light of the present, and yet the truth is this: the future has never existed as a predetermined sentence. It is merely a mirror one that reflects precisely what we plant today. Tragically, most people do not sow faith. They sow fear. Fear has a strange nature. It convinces you that by worrying, you are somehow preparing, protecting, or controlling the future. But in truth, every time you worry, you are surrendering your power to an image that does not yet exist. You imagine failure. You paint pictures of lack. You rehearse scenarios of illness, and you begin to live as though they were already real. Fear drains your life force, not because it is real, but because you have invested your attention in it, and with it, your negative faith. If you look through the lens of history, you will see that every generation has carried this weight on its shoulders. Not a single era has passed without warning cries that the world is on the brink of collapse. When war breaks out, people believe it is the end. When economies crash, they fear all homes and wealth will turn to ash. When science brings new invention, some declare it a path to doom. But what has always followed every wave of fear? Humanity lives, humanity rebuilds, humanity moves forward. The grim visions were never real, yet the habit of planting them in the mind repeats over and over. Fear becomes an invisible inheritance, passed from one generation to the next. Look closely and you will see it clearly. The future is not a fixed map. It is a pristine field waiting for your hand to sow. Every thought is a seed. Every emotion, a stream of water. Every word, a ray of sunlight. And from these, the field begins to yield its harvest. If you plant anxiety today, a forest of unease will sprout tomorrow. But if you plant faith today, a garden of peace will blossom. This law works in silence, but it does not fail. The tragedy is that most people let fear hold the brush. Instead of painting a luminous tomorrow, they allow fear to cover the canvas in gray and black. They write an entire silent film of failure and proceed to live inside that story. But no one ever said fear must direct the script. You are the one holding the projector. You are the one with the power to rewrite the narrative. Now take a moment and face this truth. How many times have you lost sleep worrying about something that never happened? How many times have you trembled waiting for a terrible result only to find that reality was far gentler than you had imagined. This is proof that most fear is a shadow, not substance, and if it is a mirage, then you have the power to withdraw your gaze and redirect your light toward what you truly desire. No one escapes darkness by staring at darkness. The only person who can release you from fear is yourself, by turning your consciousness in a new direction. See the future as a mirror and ask yourself, what do I want it to reflect? A face gaunt from worry, or eyes ablaze with faith? A barren field of fear, or a golden harvest of trust? It all begins here. Now, in this single moment, the fear of the future will continue to burden humanity for as long as we forget the creative power already within us. But in a single moment of awakening, if you simply pause and realize that tomorrow has not yet been written, you will see the pen is already in your hand, and in that instant, you can begin anew. You can plant a different seed. You can paint with a different color. Do not let tomorrow become a haunting ghost. Let it become a blank canvas upon which you draw the vision your soul yearns to see. And remember, the power to do so is not far from you. It lies within you right now, in this breath, in this decision. The future holds no power other than what you give it. When you give it faith, it returns light. When you give it fear, it merely mirrors the darkness. The choice has never left your hands. So begin now. The moment you recognize fear as merely an invisible burden, you have already become lighter. The moment you remember that the future is only the reflection of the present, you reclaim the brush, and from here forward, the color of tomorrow will depend entirely on the seed you plant today. The cycle of history and crisis, every age repeats the emotion of collective fear. Yet the problem lies not in the events, but in the habit of doubting the divine power. If you look back across the flow of history, you will see a strange repetition. Every century carries its own crisis, its own upheaval, and each time humanity believes it is living through the darkest hour. When war breaks out, they believe mankind will be erased. When famine strikes, they believe life itself will be extinguished. When economies collapse, they believe there is nothing left to cling to. When disease spreads, they believe it marks the end of an age. Yet when the storm has passed, humanity still stands, still moves forward, still rebuilds. What repeats itself is not the nature of the crisis, but the posture of mankind toward it, a deeply ingrained habit of doubting the divine power at work. In truth, the crises of humanity are but new masks for an old fear. Each century clothes it in a different garment, but beneath remains the same unease, the same confusion, the same whirlwind of doubt. Why are we so quick to tremble before headlines, before rumors, before economic or political upheaval? Because deep in the soul, we forget that there is an eternal order, an immutable principle, a divine law that no event can overturn. We doubt that law, and in that very moment of doubt, fear seizes the throne of the mind. Have you noticed that when crises erupt, people forget all the times they have already survived previous storms? We tremble as though this time were different, as though this time truly were the end. But history proves the opposite, that humanity always finds a way through, that after the night there is always dawn. And what determines the outcome is not the event itself, but how people choose to respond. The one who lets fear guide them collapses even before the storm arrives, while the one who holds faith stands firm even when the storm roars. This is the undeniable truth. Every crisis exposes the spiritual nature of each person. Some allow worry to extinguish the light in their eyes, while others use the crisis as an opportunity to deepen faith, to perceive more clearly the hand of the divine protecting them, And in the densest darkness, that light shines all the brighter. Crisis does not alter divine power. It merely reveals the measure of our faith in it. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, how many times have you feared that a crisis would destroy everything, only to find yourself still standing, still breathing, still continuing the journey? How many times did you believe every door was shut, only for another door to open? How many times did you doubt that the divine had abandoned you, only to discover later that in that very period you learnt your deepest lessons? Let me ask you this, and answer it honestly within yourself. Have you not many times allowed fear to script the story, only to see that it never unfolded in the dreadful way you imagined? And if that is true, then is the fear you hold now anything more than the repetition of an old play? This question is not merely for reflection, but to awaken you to your own presence. In this moment, you are here listening now, which means you have passed through countless crises, and yet life remains within you. This is living proof that fear has never held absolute power, and the divine power has never forsaken you. I am grateful for your presence in this journey, for your listening is itself evidence that humanity can pause, observe, and choose faith over doubt. So from this day forward, when the world once again resounds with the clamor of crisis, when gloomy forecasts are amplified on every front page, you can choose a different response. You can remind yourself that this is but another cycle, that history has staged the same drama of fear many times before, and you need not play the part. You can step aside. You can hold steady. You can affirm that the divine power is still in operation, and that very faith will become your safe shelter in the storm. Crises will pass, as they always have throughout history, but what you discover about yourself in the midst of a crisis will remain forever. That is a spiritual treasure no upheaval can take away. And when you choose trust, you do more than save your own soul. You become a light by which those around you see that they too need not lie trapped in the old cycle of fear. You become proof that the cycle can be broken by a soul that knows where to place its faith. Thank you for being here, for listening, for walking with me through this part of the journey. Your very presence is the beginning of rewriting the story, not the story of crisis, but the story of faith, the metaphor of a city in darkness, in New York's blackout. A group affirmed divine love governs all, transforming fear into sacred space and proving that fear exists only in the way we perceive and illuminate. In 1942, New York sank into a night of impenetrable darkness. The entire city was ordered to extinguish its lights to avoid potential air raids. The sky turned into a heavy black curtain. Streets stood deserted. Windows were cloaked in shadow. In the minds of millions, the specter of bombs loomed above. A single misstep could ignite the city into a sea of flames. This was fear of the future at its peak, not a vague dread, but a visceral terror breathing through every heartbeat. Yet in a small room on 57th Street, a group of people gathered. There were no screams, no chaos, only a solemn stillness. They did not stare into the darkness outside, but focused instead on a truth within. In unison, each voice proclaimed, "Divine love governs all." 4 simple words, yet powerful enough to shift the very atmosphere in that room. In that moment, darkness ceased to be a threat. It became sacred space, a temple in which the light of the inner spirit was kindled. The miracle was not that the city was spared from bombs, but that the human mind was spared from the destruction of fear. When they affirmed together that divine love rules all, anxiety vanished as if a flame had been deprived of fuel. Fear has no inherent power. It survives only on the attention and belief we feed it. But once that fuel is withdrawn, once the mind turns toward a higher principle, fear loses its throne. Now picture the contrast of two worlds coexisting at the same moment. Outside, a city plunged into darkness where millions of minds were engulfed in visions of disaster. Inside, that same darkness held stillness, trust, and inward light. The difference was not in the circumstances, but in the perception. Faced with the same blackness, one group saw danger, the other saw a chance to affirm the sovereignty of love. And it was that choice that transformed a simple room into a sacred sanctuary, one where fear could not survive. The blackout of the city carries a profound lesson. Fear is not born of external events, but of the lens through which we view them. When our gaze is tinted by doubt, darkness becomes threat, but when our vision is anchored in faith, darkness becomes the opportunity for inner light to emerge. Darkness itself has no strength. It merely reveals the absence of light. And once light is present, darkness needs no eviction. It simply disappears. Therefore, fear is never a fixed sentence. It is only an empty space in the mind where the light of truth has yet to be lit. That small group on 57th Street proved this not with theory, but with lived experience. They did not wait for crisis to end in order to find peace. They generated peace within the crisis, and when peace appeared, fear lost its grip. That story mirrors our own personal lives. Each time we face a crisis, we stand before two options. One is to let the mind weave a tale of ruin, to nourish the darkness until it consumes all faith. The other is to affirm an eternal truth, to plant a seed of belief and let it shine, transforming the circumstance into a vessel for spiritual growth. That small room in a darkened city is the embodiment of the second choice. In that darkness, no light shone from the outside, but there arose a radiance far greater, the collective light of shared belief. When people unite in affirming the same truth, they generate an energy field strong enough to dispel even collective fear. None among them could stop a war or deflect a falling bomb, but each one could govern their mind and perception. And when the mind shifts, the atmosphere follows. The metaphor of the blacked-out city reminds us, darkness is but the stage for light to show its strength. Without darkness, we would never see how brilliant the light can be. Without crisis, we would never know what faith is capable of. Fear is not the final enemy. It is a test to see whether we will remember the divine power that governs all. And from this story remains one immutable truth. Power does not lie in resisting fear, but in replacing it with faith. Just as that room needed no physical light to counter the darkness, they only needed to ignite the light from within, and once lit, that light could not be extinguished by any external calamity. From this we understand fear possesses no power of its own. It lives only through our perception and projection. If we project ruin, it swells into nightmare. If we project the truth of love, it fades like mist. The city in darkness is not merely a memory of wartime. It is a mirror for every generation, reminding us that in the deepest night, the greatest light can be lit from within the soul of man. The future is a blank screen. Every negative vision is just a film directed by the imagination. Worry does not prepare you for tomorrow. It only drains the power of today. Imagine within your mind a massive blank screen. It holds no images, no sound, no predetermined script. With every moment you live, you project onto that screen frames drawn from your thoughts and emotions. If you project scenes of loss, the screen instantly fills with shadows. If you project peace, abundance, and trust, it lights up like the dawn. The future has never been a fixed sentence. It is merely the reflection of the film you choose to play today. The problem is that most people are unaware of this power. Instead of using their imagination to construct a radiant tomorrow, they turn it into a theater of fear. They imagine failure and then carry the mood of the defeated. They visualize illness and their bodies begin to tremble as if the illness were already real. They script scenarios of loss and their hearts break even before anything has happened. They replay these dreadful films over and over until the subconscious accepts them as true. And life outside mirrors the same. The truth is that worry has never prepared you for a safer tomorrow. Worry is simply the act of draining the energy of today to fuel an illusion. It's like a man rowing a boat while staring into an imaginary abyss ahead. His grip loosens, his strength fades, and the boat ceases to move. The only real power you possess lies in this moment. It is here, and only here, that you can plant a different seed, write a new scene, and choose another color for tomorrow's canvas. There is one question I ask you to answer honestly within yourself. How many times in your life have you feared that something terrible would happen, only to realize it never did, or if it did, it was far less severe than your imagined script? And if this has happened again and again, can you find the courage to believe that the fear you're holding now may also be nothing more than a film directed by imagination? If you can see that, then you'll know you don't have to remain a helpless viewer. You can step forward, take hold of the projector, change the script, and transform the entire story of your life. The future is nothing but a blank screen, and the power lies in your hands. You can choose to have it reflect nightmares, or you can choose to have it reflect a golden tomorrow. What you project today will return to you tomorrow. This is not a vague philosophy. It is a spiritual law. As you sow, so shall you reap. What you imagine is what you live. If you want to see a different outcome, begin now. And I want to thank you for your presence in this moment, because your presence alone is proof that you are not running from fear. You are facing it directly. You are ready to rewrite the film of your life. If you've listened this far, let me know you're here by leaving a comment below that says, I am ready to change, or simply type the number 1. That small act is your affirmation that from this moment forward, fear no longer holds the projector. You do. You are now the writer. You are now the director of your life. And that blank screen will show only what you truly desire. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. The future is waiting for you, not as a looming darkness, but as a pure, untouched canvas. And beginning today, you have the power to decide what light will shine upon it. The law of mental sowing and reaping. You cannot sow fear and reap peace. You cannot sow lack and reap abundance. The universe reflects precisely the seeds of thought you plant. In nature, no one sows riche expecting roses. No one plants thorns and waits for sweet fruit. The law of sowing and reaping in the natural world is so exact, so absolute, that no exception is permitted. And the very same law governs the spiritual life of man, with one difference. The seeds being sown are not grains of wheat or corn, but thoughts. Every idea, every emotion, every mental image you hold drops into the unseen soil of your subconscious. And sooner or later, it will sprout into a tangible result in the outer world. This is a truth many resist because it requires us to face our own responsibility. It is easier to blame circumstances, destiny, or external events, but if you look honestly, you will see that your current life is merely a precise reflection of what you have previously planted. You cannot sow images of fear and expect to harvest peace. You cannot feed feelings of lack and hope for abundance. You cannot repeat complaints and expect life to sing back in harmony. The universe is not biased. It is a mirror. giving back only what you have deposited into it. Notice how on days when you are drowning in worry, the world around you seems to tremble with unrest. Every word you hear seems to touch your fear. Every minor disruption feels like the herald of disaster. Yet on days when your mind is calm, the same world looks entirely different. The same people, the same work, yet now you perceive opportunity, support, and joy. The world did not change, your consciousness did. And with that shift, reality appeared transformed. It is like the lens of a camera. If you place a dark filter over it, everything appears gloomy. If you replace it with a clear one, the image becomes radiant. The mind is the lens, and the world is the photo. The filter you install determines what will be reflected. There are no exceptions, no distortions. That is why any attempt to change your life from the outside, while ignoring the inner root, is futile. True transformation begins with the seeds of thought. Here is something deeper still. Your subconscious does not know the difference between real and imagined. It simply obeys what your conscious mind repeatedly tells it. If you feed it images of fear, it treats them as commands and strives to bring them into your lived experience. If you continually project visions of prosperity, health, and love, it also accepts them as orders and begins marshaling all resources to make them real. There is no confusion. The universe responds to the exact vibration you emit. Throughout the darkest moments of history, those who remained composed and nurtured positive images within were often the ones who survived and thrived, not because they were luckier, but because they sowed different seeds. While the masses planted collective fear, they planted faith. While many sowed emotions of lack, they sowed gratitude. While some envisioned collapse, they envisioned rebuilding, and as the law must hold, they reaped exactly what they had sown. Remember, every thought is a seed. There are no harmless thoughts. No thoughts vanish without impact. Every seed falls into the soil of the soul, and when the conditions are right, it will grow. So mastery over life does not begin with control over circumstances, but with control over thought. If you wish to reap peace, plant peaceful images and feelings. If you wish to reap abundance, plant visions of fullness and gratitude. If you seek love, sow kindness and compassion. This law also explains why some seem to live in an endless loop of misfortune. They keep planting the same seeds, repeating the same complaints, recreating the same images, and they reap the same results until they awaken and change their seed. The harvest will not change. This is not punishment. It is perfect justice. The law of mental sowing and reaping does not fail. Wisdom lies in knowing you do not need to destroy the entire field. You only need to start planting different seeds. Onanyu said, one new image, one new belief planted today will grow and gradually transform the landscape of tomorrow. Like a barren field that begins to shift because of a single green sprout change, may not come instantly, but it will come, and it will come precisely. The outer world is only a mirror, and the mirror never argues with the image. It reflects. If you want the mirror to smile, you must smile first. If you want it to shine, you must clean the lens. Life is the same. If you wish to see peace, plant peace. If you wish to see prosperity, plant prosperity. If you want light, plant light. The universe will not betray you. It will return exactly what you have given it. This is the most unyielding and yet the most hope-filled law, because it means you are not bound by your past. No matter how many negative seeds you planted yesterday, today you can choose a new seed, and from the moment you change your seed, the harvest begins to change. This is the greatest power ever given to man. No one can steal your right to plant. And from those invisible seeds, your whole life will blossom. The power of the present. Every experience happens now. If you want to change your destiny, sow a new seed in this moment with faith and peace. Every experience you've ever had, joyful or painful, has only ever occurred in one moment, the present. When you love now. When you fear now. Whether you succeed or fail, it all happens here and now. The future you worry about has never arrived. The past you mourn is already gone. Only the present has never left your side. It is the only ground where you hold the power to plant a new seed, the only place where the entire course of your life can be changed. The greatest mistake humanity makes is attempting to seize control of tomorrow. They say, when I'm healthier, I'll feel peace. When my job is stable, I'll be happy. When opportunity comes, I'll begin. But the more they say this, the more they miss the power already available in the now. The future is only the reflection of the picture you're painting today. If you sow fear into today, tomorrow can only reflect that fear. But if you plant faith, if you plant peace in this very moment, you are already changing the harvest ahead. Jesus once said, each day has enough trouble of its own. He was not speaking of pessimism, but pointing to a deeper law. The universe only responds to what you think now. It does not heed the complaints of tomorrow, nor preserve the weeping of yesterday. It answers only the vibration you are sending in this moment. That is why to change your destiny, you don't need to master 1,000 tomorrows. You only need to master a single moment of now. Picture someone adrift at sea in the middle of a storm. If he sits and imagines tomorrow's hurricane, envisions himself exhausted and drowning, he will lose all strength to row in the moment. But if, in this very second, he affirms that divine strength is with him, that his faith is his all, his soul will find steadiness, and with inner stillness, the hands regain power, and the boat moves forward. Change does not begin when the waves calm. Change begins when the mind becomes calm. Now, in the same way, you cannot wait until everything is perfect to start sowing seeds of belief. You must sow them while the chaos remains, while the darkness surrounds you, while the worry still breathes down your neck. Only when you sow here and now does the harvest begin to form. Every delay keeps you trapped in the same fearful picture. But one decision right now can shift the entire current. The miracle of the present is that it is not just a fleeting moment. It is the door to eternity. When you are truly awake in the now, you touch the stream of life that never stops flowing. You understand that only in this instant can you connect with the eternal source. And once you are connected, all worry about the future dissolves, because you know no tomorrow can separate you from the power that flows through this moment. Many ask, how do I return to the present when my mind keeps running ahead? The answer is not resistance, but replacement. Instead of letting imagination script anxiety, affirm a simple truth. God is here. God is my strength. Every repetition draws your mind back to the center, where peace is always waiting. This is the moment you practice the power of the voice within, not merely a voice you hear, but a space you return to, not an external sound, but an internal sanctuary, your place of grounding. When you grasp this truth, you understand why the present is called a gift, not because it is brief, but because it holds the entirety of your creative power. Every ounce of peace you long for already exists here. Every wealth you hope for is alive now. Every strength you seek is flowing in this moment. All that's needed is to awaken, to recognize, and to plant the corresponding seed. The present is the soil. Your thoughts are the seeds, emotions are the water, faith is the light. If you tend them rightly, nothing can stop the bloom. If you neglect them, nothing can stop the weeds. The choice lies in your hands, and the most beautiful truth is this: you don't have to wait one more second to begin. You can sow now, and from this moment forward, your path is already shifting. The power of the present is the foundation of all transformation. You cannot go back to repair the past. You cannot leap ahead to control the future, but you can stand firm in this moment, plant a new seed, and allow it to ripple into a new harvest. When you master the present, you are rewriting the future, and from here on, each moment will become a living testimony to the eternal power of spirit. The golden key method: do not argue with fear. Simply replace it with a single idea of God. Repeat God to bring the mind back to its silent center. In spiritual life, there exists a principle so simple and yet more powerful than the most complex reasoning. You do not need to argue with fear every time you resist it. You inadvertently feed it energy. The harder you try to push it away, the more tightly its image clings to the mind. Like a darkened room, no amount of flailing, shouting, or pleading will drive out the darkness, because darkness has no substance. One single act is enough. Turn on the light, and the darkness vanishes. The golden key is that light. Instead of analyzing, instead of counting worst-case scenarios, instead of letting the mind spiral into endless questions, the golden key teaches you to do one thing. Replace the thought. When worry arises, you do not engage it. You do not argue. You do not beg it to leave. You immediately insert into your mind a different idea, a single, unwavering idea of God. You simply repeat in silence, God. Every time you repeat it, you are pulling your attention out of the storm and returning to the silent center, where only the presence of the divine exists. The miracle of this method lies in its simplicity. You need no lengthy prayers, nor elaborate rituals, just a single word, but a word spoken with focus and faith. God. Repeat it until the mind stops weaving its dark story. Repeat it until your breath slows. Repeat it until you feel that presence pouring through you like a cool stream. In that moment, fear has no more ground to stand on. Some may question how one simple word can change reality. But the golden key is not a magical incantation. It is a principle of mind. Thought cannot be erased by force. It can only be replaced by a stronger thought. And the most powerful thought the human mind can hold is the awareness of God. When the mind is filled with that awareness, all lesser images fall away. Think of your mind as a field. If you do not sow deliberately, weeds will grow. But if you plant a single steadfast seed and water it with care, in time the weeds are overtaken. The golden key is the same. Every time you repeat God, you are sowing that seed into the soil of your consciousness. Each repetition deepens its roots, and the anxious sprouts of fear lose their ground. This practice can be done anytime, anywhere. When you're standing in a long line with a restless mind, repeat God. When you're about to walk into a stressful meeting, repeat God. When you can't sleep and fear creeps in, repeat God. No need for volume, no need for ritual, just steady, faithful repetition. Every time you do it, you are turning on the light, and fear cannot exist in a space that is filled with light. There are real stories that prove this power. A woman in chronic pain, instead of sinking into worry, focused solely on repeating God. Every time the pain returned, the pain did not vanish instantly, but the fear did. And once the fear left, healing began. A man buried in financial crisis, instead of obsessing over debt, silently repeated God each morning. Gradually, peace returned. Then opportunities emerged. What changed first was not the outer world, but the inner world. And once the inner shifted, the outer had no choice but to follow. The golden key is not about controlling outcomes. It does not instruct you to impose your will upon the universe. It simply brings you back to center, where your consciousness becomes one with divine law. And when that union happens, everything else arranges itself. You don't need to control. You only need to trust. Remember, each time you say God, you are not merely uttering a word. You are opening a door for light to enter. You are cutting off the fuel that sustains fear. You are replacing a darkened film with a scene of clarity. You are giving the mind a stable anchor instead of letting it drift in stormy waters. The golden key is the art of return, not return to the past, not a chase toward the future, but return to the silent center of your being, where the presence of God has always lived. And when you stand in that center, you see clearly, fear never had true power. It was only the absence of light. One word is enough to fill that space, God. And from this truth, you understand the golden key is not out there. It is not in events. It is not in someone else's hands. It lies within your own mind, in your ability to replace thought, in the power of focused attention. Each time you use it, the door of darkness closes and the door of peace opens. That is the quiet but mighty power the golden key places in your hands. Escaping the hypnosis of tomorrow, society trains us to live for the future, but only the present is the gateway to creation. Practice pausing, breathing, and affirming God is here now. From childhood, we are taught that happiness lies in some distant tomorrow. Study hard, so one day you'll get a job. Work relentlessly, so later you can rest. Endure today, so that someday you'll be free. A whole life is built upon the collective hypnosis that peace and value only exist in the future. But the sobering truth is, no one has ever lived in tomorrow. Because when tomorrow arrives, it always bears the name today. And if you do not know how to live in the present, you will forever chase a mirage. You can never grasp. The hypnosis of tomorrow causes people to live like borrowers of time. They trade the present moment for a vision that may never exist. They sacrifice peace now in hopes that it will be repaid later. But when the future finally comes, they move their happiness to yet another distant day. Thus, a lifetime is spent waiting. And in the end, they realize they never truly lived. Escaping this hypnosis does not mean rejecting responsibility, nor does it mean abandoning all plans. It simply means ceasing to give tomorrow the authority to control how you feel today. You may set goals, but do not let them rob you of present peace. You may hold dreams, but do not let them become excuses to postpone joy. Because every act of creation, every ounce of power, every miracle can only emerge in the moment you are breathing. Look back on your life. How many sleepless nights have you had worrying about a tomorrow that never came? How many times did you construct the worst possible outcome, only to wake and find the sun still rising and things far better than you imagined? This is proof. Fear of the future is merely a product of the mind. It is like a thick fog that hides the light of the present, but one gust of awareness and the fog is gone. To break the spell of this hypnosis requires no complex ritual. All it asks is that you pause, breathe deeply, and affirm, God is here now. In that moment, the mind that was racing toward the future halts. The body that was tense begins to soften, and you realize that life can only ever flow in the now. Each time you practice this, you are pulling the mind from the spiral of anxiety and returning it to the creative center. A simple method is this. Once every hour, stop for 1 minute, close your eyes, breathe deeply, silently repeat, God is here now. You will be amazed how in just 1 minute, your energy, your clarity, and your sense of peace shift. What felt urgent a moment ago now feels small. And a sacred space opens within you. In that space, you no longer need to chase after the future. You simply open your eyes and see that everything you sought is already present. When this habit becomes second nature, you will discover that the hypnosis of society begins to dissolve, no longer caught in cycles of comparison, no longer bound to timelines, no longer allowing vague projections to define your worth. You begin to live truly in the present. And from that presence, you create the future. The future no longer looms like a ghost to fear, but becomes a mirror that reflects what you sow now. Escaping the hypnosis of tomorrow is the first step toward returning to the soul's true freedom. You no longer obey voices that say, wait, sacrifice, worry. You enter the present moment as if entering a holy temple where life flows in fullness, where you can breathe without bondage, where you know you are truly alive. And from that full presence, everything begins to change. Your actions become more powerful because they are no longer driven by fear. Your decisions become clearer because they are no longer clouded by anxious projections. Your mind becomes more creative because you are no longer trapped in the cage of tomorrow. You've stepped into the vast sky of now. The hypnosis of tomorrow has haunted human consciousness for far too long, trapping generation after generation in illusion. But you can be the one to break the loop by pausing, breathing, and affirming God is here. Now, you cut the rope. You return to source, and you walk forward in a new freedom, a freedom no one grants you because it has always been within you, waiting to be remembered. The present is the only true gateway to creation. When you open that door, you will see clearly everything you have been seeking is already here, not in tomorrow, not in the past, but in the sacred breath of this moment. Thought creates the dawn. True morning begins with the first thought of the day. A story from the Great Depression shows that when the inner image changes, the outer result must follow. Dawn does not begin when the sun breaks over the horizon. The true dawn begins the moment you open your eyes and allow the first thought to pass through your mind. That single moment shapes the inner atmosphere, and your entire day will reflect the picture you just painted in consciousness. The one who begins the morning with anxiety will find the whole day colored by fear. The one who begins with trust will walk through the day lit by inner sunlight. The universe does not discriminate. It simply returns the exact image you chose to plant at sunrise. During the Great Depression, while America was gripped by the fear of bankruptcy and joblessness, a young merchant in the Bronx came forward with tired eyes and a heavy heart. He owned a chain of shoe stores, and sales were falling by the day. Every morning upon waking, the first image in his mind was that of an empty shop, of staff walking out, of impending ruin, and it was no surprise that months later, those very images became reality. He wasn't just running his business with effort. He was planting seeds of failure into every new day. But with guidance, he began a simple practice. Before getting out of bed, he closed his eyes and deliberately chose a different image to hold in his mind. Instead of picturing a closed store, he imagined it bustling with customers, filled with laughter and conversations, the sound of money flowing, commerce alive. He even gave thanks as if all of it had already happened. At first, he did it with doubt, because the outer world still looked grim. But day after day, the new seed took root. and something miraculous occurred. Within months, sales began to climb, cash flow returned, and his business was revived. What had really changed? Not the market, not the economy. What changed was the map within his mind. When the inner picture shifted, he became a different man. He entered his store no longer with the posture of defeat, but with confidence. He spoke to his employees with hope instead of heaviness. He looked at his customers with expectancy instead of fear. And from there, everything around him had no choice but to shift as well. The true dawn did not come from the morning sun. It came from the first thought of a new day. This is not naive daydreaming. It is a spiritual law. When you plant a positive image, the subconscious mind accepts it as instruction, and from that instruction, all decisions, emotions, and behaviors begin to align. The same is true in reverse. If you begin the day with fear, your subconscious accepts that fear as a command, and you will live as if it were already true. There is no strange magic here, only the exact operation of the law of sowing and reaping. Look back at your own mornings. How often have you woken up with worry, thinking of tasks undone, obstacles ahead, and then carried the invisible weight of it all day long? But on mornings when you began with gratitude, when you affirmed something as simple as God is my source, the whole day felt lighter. You were met with unexpected ease, sober blessings, and peace that carried you forward. The difference did not come from outside. It came from the seed you planted at dawn. This is why the wise have always emphasized the sacredness of the morning. The moment just after waking is when the mind is most open, most receptive. It is the fertile soil for the seeds of the entire day. If you sow faith, you walk through the day with faith. If you sow gratitude, joy walks with you. If you sow images of abundance, you begin noticing unexpected opportunities. The true sunrise is not outside your window. It is in the consciousness you choose to begin with. The story of the merchant during the Great Depression is living proof. When you change the inner image, the outer result must follow. You do not need to change the whole world. You only need to change the first picture of the morning. And from that picture, an entirely new world will rise around you. Thought creates the dawn. And every morning, when you open your eyes, you hold the power to paint that dawn. Mental maps. Draw your mental blueprint each morning with a specific scene and a simple affirmation. Repeat consistently so the subconscious can receive and organize reality. Accordingly, every road you walk in life is first drawn in the mind. No house is ever built without a blueprint, and no life is ever shaped without a mental map. The only difference is that most people allow their map to be drawn randomly by anxiety, by habit, by outdated mental imagery. But those who understand the law take up the pen, draw their picture with intention, and allow the subconscious to make it real. This is the power of mental maps, a silent tool capable of reshaping the entire current of your life. Morning is the decisive moment. As you wake, the mind is still quiet, untouched by news, tasks, or yesterday's memory. It is an open gate leading straight into the subconscious. If you leave it unattended, weeds will grow, meaning fear and old images will continue to take root. But if you act deliberately, you can plan something different, vivid and alive. Choose a specific scene, not vague like smiling as you receive good news, signing an important contract, or embracing someone in joy. The subconscious does not respond to abstraction. It responds to clarity. After visualizing, add a short affirmation, something like, today I live in peace and receive good news, or I'm guided to make the right decisions. Just one sentence, clear and declarative. then repeat it with full presence, as if sealing the image with faith. You don't need to repeat it hundreds of times. One moment of clarity and conviction is more powerful than 100 hollow repetitions. A single focused idea, believed deeply, imprints upon the subconscious more effectively than endless words without energy. Your subconscious is fertile soil. Once it receives the seed, it begins to organize reality to reflect it. You may call this coincidence, but in truth, it is the law of correspondence at work. When the inner image changes, you step into the day with different energy, take different actions, and thus get different results. This is not empty self-suggestion. It is intentional direction, because if you don't draw your own map, the world will draw it for you. And it usually draws in strokes of fear and confusion. Here lies a vital key: consistent repetition. A map only works when you hold to it. If today you draw a picture of joy and tomorrow overwrite it with fear, your mind won't know which direction to follow. Like someone who keeps changing routes, you'll end up stuck in place. But if you remain faithful to one image, returning to it each morning, the subconscious will eventually treat it as irrefutable, and your entire life will begin to move along the new trajectory. Remember, you cannot reap clear results from a blurry map. Don't say, I don't want to fail. Say, I succeed in my work. Don't say, I don't want anxiety. Say, I live in peace. The subconscious does not understand negation. It only responds to the image you concentrate upon. So always choose a positive image, a simple affirmation, and finish with gratitude. When you give thanks as if it were already done, you enter the state of having received the most powerful state for attracting your corresponding reality. Some may ask, how can I believe in an image when the outside looks completely opposite? The answer is, you do not need to see with your physical eyes. You must see with your spiritual vision. An empty field does not mean the seed was never planted. It simply means the seed is resting in the soil, waiting for its time to sprout. Mental maps are the same. Once planted and nurtured, they will grow when the season is right. The universe never betrays a seed planted in faith. And through this practice, you will come to realize a profound truth. Every morning you draw your map. You are not just creating a new day. You are training your own mind to return to center. You are practicing. This is the power of the voice within. Not merely a voice you hear, but a space you come home to, not external sound, but an internal sanctuary where you return each morning to find your stability in an unstable world. Mental maps are not some distant technique. They are a power you've always had. Every day, you've been drawing your map, perhaps without realizing what you were drawing, but now take the pen back, choose the right image, sow the clear affirmation, repeat it consistently, and the subconscious will begin to rearrange everything so that reality reflects the very blueprint you've drawn in silence. And from a single mental picture, an entirely new life will be born. Change and divine law. Upheaval is not destruction, but evolution. What was once feared becomes a blessing when seen through faith and discernment. Human beings often tremble before any form of change, as though every disruption carries the face of destruction. But the deeper truth is this: change is not the enemy. It is the form of evolution ordained by divine law from the beginning. Nothing in creation remains static. All things move. All things shift to reveal new levels of truth without change. The seed cannot break open into a sprout. Water cannot rise into clouds. And the soul cannot mature only when viewed through the lens of faith. Will you see that even within upheaval, there is an invisible hand guiding all things toward a higher good. Recall the inventions that humanity once feared. When the first locomotives rolled forward, some believed the human body would disintegrate if it moved faster than 30 kilometers per hour. When the telegraph was introduced, many declared it would disrupt the natural order. When electric light first illuminated the streets, some cried that it was the tool of the devil. Yet time has shown that what once looked like a threat became a step toward enlightenment. This did not happen by accident. It happened because every true change carries within it a piece of divine law, a piece of evolution that cannot be reversed. The fearful eye sees destruction. The faithful eye sees opportunity. The difference lies not in the event, but in the vision. Fire can burn a house, but fire also cooks food, forges steel, and warms us through winter. Electricity can kill, but it also brings light into every home, unlocks science, art, and healing. It is not the energy that determines the outcome. It is the posture of the human heart in receiving that energy. If received through fear, it becomes threat. If received through faith and discernment, it becomes blessing in your personal life. Change comes in just the same way. A job is lost, a relationship ends, a door closes, and at first glance, it feels like the end. But when you are calm enough to look deeper, you will see it is simply a necessary reorganization, preparing the ground for a new elevation. Just as the seed must dissolve in darkness to sprout, just as ice must melt for the river to flow, every ending is simply life shifting into a higher form. Nothing is truly lost. All is transformed to reveal more of divine order's beauty. What brings suffering is not the event itself, it is how we see the event. When the mind is ruled by fear, every change is interpreted as threat. But when the mind is anchored in faith, every change becomes an invitation to discover a deeper layer of life. Moses saw a bush burning, but not consumed. That was not a sign of destruction. It was the image of sacred fire, a life force that burns without ever being diminished. That is the nature of true change. New light is revealed, but eternal life is never lost. Science never truly invents anything new. It merely uncovers laws that were always there. Faraday, the father of modern electricity, never saw himself as a conqueror of nature. He viewed himself as a humble student, learning from the divine law, hidden in every molecule. And when the mind of man opens, divine law unveils one more piece of itself. What was once considered danger becomes deliverance. This is why every genuine breakthrough arises from the union of intellect and faith discovery, paired with reverence for the unchanging order of the universe. Ask yourself honestly, how many times in your life have you feared a change that seemed like the end, only to later realize it was the beginning of a blessed new chapter? If it has happened before, why fear again when change knocks at your door? You already have the evidence in your own experience. Divine law has never abandoned you. It has only moved you forward, higher, deeper, closer to your true essence. Therefore, change need not be avoided. It need not be feared. It is proof that life is still moving. That divine law is still working. That guidance has never ceased. Each time you meet change with faith and discernment, you will see another door opens, one that leads you into a higher dimension of light and love. Then change is no longer a violent storm, but becomes the sail that carries you farther across the eternal ocean of life. Atomic energy versus spiritual energy. The physical atom as a metaphor for the indestructible spark within the soul. Prayer and truth emit a creative force greater than any wave of fear. When humanity first witnessed the unleashed power of the atom, the world trembled. A tiny nucleus, seemingly insignificant, held enough energy to shake the entire planet. But if the heart of matter can contain such tremendous force, then the depth of the human soul carries a reservoir of energy infinitely greater. This is not energy meant for destruction, but spiritual energy for creation, for healing, for guiding the human spirit beyond every shadow of fear. The same spark can birth a bomb or kindle a light. The atom in one direction becomes terror. The soul in another becomes radiance. The issue is never the energy itself. It is the hand that guides it. When energy passes through unawakened minds, it becomes a weapon. When it flows through a heart grounded in faith, it becomes a miracle. Thus, the great lesson from the atomic age is not merely a warning against destruction. It is a reminder that within every person exists a radiant core, a spiritual nucleus, and when awakened, it holds power beyond any weapon conceived by man. During times of war, soldiers wrote letters from the trenches. They described how, amidst the bombs and the constant shadow of death, a simple whispered prayer could calm the storm within. Words like "God is my strength" or "God is here" were enough to transform a battlefield into a sanctuary. The gunfire remained. The danger persisted, but something had shifted their inner posture. Fear was replaced by a quiet strength that radiated from within, often calming even those around them. This is evidence that spiritual energy doesn't just affect the individual. It expands into a force field that embraces communities. Imagine this. If a single fearful thought can rob you of sleep, accelerate your heart, and darken your clarity, what could a thought saturated with truth and faith accomplish? It not only lifts your mood, it alters your energetic field, and through that influences outcomes and people around you. A physical atom, when split, sends shock waves that destroy, but a spiritual atom, released through prayer and faith, sends waves of order, peace, and unseen strength that rebuild the invisible fabric of life. We often believe we are too small to impact the world, but the truth is a single honest thought, a prayer born of unwavering trust, holds more power than the roaring currents of collective fear. A soul anchored in truth can influence hundreds who may never even know their name. When you hold peace in your heart, you send out a silent signal, a current of calm that dissolves the tension in the air around you. And when many do the same, the world begins to transform, not through violence, but through vibration. Let me pause and ask you, have you ever experienced a moment when fear was overwhelming, but a single prayer, a sudden certainty of faith, made it vanish in an instant? Perhaps it came during illness or at the edge of personal crisis. And yet, as you surrendered to the presence of God, you felt a strength that didn't come from outside, but surged from the core of your being. If you've known that moment, then, this power is real, more real than any storm. And I thank you for being here, because your presence in this message is itself proof that spiritual energy still has a place to shine. The world may shake in the presence of atomic power, but the future of humanity will not be determined by bombs or weapons. It will be shaped by whether each individual chooses to awaken the spiritual energy within. When one soul chooses faith over fear, love over hatred, prayer over panic, they release a force, unseen but strong enough to reshape reality. And when many choose this path, we witness a power greater than any empire, the power of truth and love, shining from the human heart. Atomic energy teaches us that great potential hides in the smallest of places. Spiritual energy reminds us that within the fragile human form lies an indestructible spark. The question is not whether power exists, but where you will aim it. And when you aim it toward love, toward truth, toward faith, you become a living witness to a force that cannot be broken. From that moment, You walk through life with a peace that cannot be shaken for you. Now know that the light within you is stronger than any darkness outside. Scientific prayer, a method of conscious direction, harmonizing vibration, and the spiritual shield amid chaos. Affirmations like I am peace, I am light are not mere words, but lawful acts. Prayer is not the desperate plea of a soul begging some distant power, nor the murmured hope of the hopeless. True prayer is a science, an exact method governed by spiritual law. It is the conscious act of directing the mind, generating harmony between thought and emotion, and opening a current of aligned energy capable of restructuring the entire external experience. When practiced correctly, prayer does not alter God's will, it alters your own consciousness. Aligning it with the immutable order of the universe, every thought and every word generates vibration, and prayer is the deliberate choice to produce the highest of these vibrations. Imagine the mind as a laboratory where every thought is a chemical reaction. If you continually feed it with anxiety and fear, the result is inner chaos. But if you infuse it with statements of truth like I am peace, I am light, or I am pure spiritual energy, the entire internal system adjusts just as an instrument, when tuned, produces pure and harmonious sound. Scientific prayer requires no ornate rituals. It simply demands focus and presence. A single statement, uttered with unwavering belief, carries more power than hours of aimless pleading. When you declare, I am peace, with full conviction, you synchronize your consciousness with the rhythm of tranquility. When you say, I am light, you awaken the radiance already within the soul. And when you affirm, I am pure spiritual energy, you activate the treasure, the universe planted within you from the beginning of time. What makes prayer a science is its repeatability and its power to produce consistent results. Each time you focus on an affirmation, you emit a specific vibration. Through repetition and attention, that vibration carves itself into the subconscious. Once etched deeply, it becomes a spiritual habit. And when your spiritual habits change, your entire life must follow suit, just like a mathematical equation. When you input the right formula, the result is inevitable, regardless of external conditions. In times of social turmoil, scientific prayer becomes an invisible shield, guarding the soul from being swept away. When headlines are soaked in despair and the air is heavy with fear, those who return to truth-affirming statements remain grounded. They walk through the storm untouched because they are not tuned to the chaos around them, but to a higher, stable frequency. That inner state radiates outward, allowing others to feel steadiness in their presence. A profound example is when communities come together and repeat affirmations like divine love governs all, or God is our source. No lengthy explanations, no arguments, just the steady, unified echo of sacred truth. And in those moments, the collective atmosphere changes, worry dissolves, spiritual clarity rises, even outer circumstances begin to shift. This is not coincidence. It is the direct result of the universal law of vibrational synchronization. When the people ask, can a single phrase really change reality? The answer is no, not if it is an empty phrase. But if it is saturated with faith and spoken with presence, it can shift not only mood, but the vibrational foundation of your being. And when that foundation changes, reality must respond, just as when sound shifts in a room, the air vibrates accordingly, and everything within that space begins to resonate. Scientific prayer is not a random act. It is a discipline of the soul. It requires the repetition of true affirmations, the cultivation of focus, and the patience to allow the subconscious to be reprogrammed. Once it becomes habit, it becomes reflex, in the face of adversity, you no longer collapse into fear, but return automatically to the truth already planted within you. And in that moment, strength rises. The weapons of the world are steel and violence, but the weapon of the soul is the sacred word. A single affirmation spoken at the right moment can extinguish the flames of panic within the mind. A faith-filled declaration can restore peace amid the storm. And when many souls practice together, their collective energy becomes a wall of light. No darkness can penetrate. Scientific prayer is the pathway for humanity to reclaim its role as conscious creator. It does not turn you into a passive receiver of luck. It makes you an active architect, one who can direct the flow of inner and outer energy to serve the cause of life. And when you are steadfast in this practice, you will come to know that each affirmation is not just a phrase, it is a key that opens the door to a new reality where peace, light, and inner power are not distant dreams, but living forces waiting to flow through you. Prophetic imagination and inner guidance. Imagination as the compass, inner guidance as the sacred map. In stillness, we discern fear from intuition and act with clarity. Imagination is not a child's toy. It is the prophetic instrument that God placed in the human mind. Every image you nurture in consciousness is like an arrow pointing toward the future. No idea is meaningless, for each one plants a seed, and that seed will one day become reality. The issue lies in the fact that most people allow their imagination to be hijacked by fear. They envision failure, illness, loss, and then live in a state of tension as if those scenarios had already come true. Yet imagination can also become a guiding light when placed in the hands of awakened consciousness. It opens the door to unseen possibilities. Think of imagination as a compass and inner guidance as the secret map. The compass points the direction, but to move wisely, you must know how to read the map. When the mind is still, you begin to hear a gentle yet unmistakable prompting. It does not shout. It does not force, rather, it appears as a subtle suggestion. This is inner guidance, a sacred instinct that helps you distinguish between the echoes of fear and the call of intuition. Only when you recognize this difference can you walk wisely, no longer swept away by the illusions of negative imagination. How many times in life have you stood before a decision and felt two opposing currents within? One is the voice of anxiety, painting a parade of worst-case outcomes. The other is a quiet certainty, a sense of peace that needs no explanation. If you are still enough to listen, you'll recognize that the second voice is always right, because it comes from the sacred center within. This is why imagination only becomes truly useful when governed by inner guidance. Without it, imagination merely magnifies the darkness rather than revealing the way forward. This is when the words ring with their full meaning. This is the power of the voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. It is not merely a whisper, but a sanctuary you can re-enter where confusion is illuminated and every decision becomes clear. When you learn to return to this place, imagination no longer runs wild. It begins to sketch visions filled with vitality. It no longer generates nightmares, but becomes the paintbrush of your future. Take a real-life example. A person stands on the edge of financial ruin. Negative imagination instantly spins up scenes of total collapse, abandonment, and despair. But when that person pauses, enters stillness, and listens to inner guidance, a different picture begins to form. A new opportunity, an unexplored path, a door they had never noticed. This image is not born of fear, it is born of faith, and as they hold on to that vision, their actions shift and the reality around them begins to change. That is prophetic imagination illuminated by divine guidance. The union of imagination and inner guidance is a miraculous tool. Imagination opens the field of possibilities. Inner guidance discerns the right path. One is vision. The other is orientation. Without imagination, you can dream of nothing beyond your present. Without guidance, imagination becomes illusion. But when the two align, you gain the ability to see far and walk true. This is how one walks through a chaotic world without being deceived by fear. To practice living in this power requires no complicated ritual. It only asks for small pockets of stillness during your day. Sit down, take a deep breath, release anxiety, and you will begin to notice images and ideas arising within. Don't believe them all, observe. The ones that arrive with tension and fear are echoes of the old mind. The ones that come with peace, even if you don't fully understand them yet, those are the voice of inner guidance. Choose those and let your imagination extend them into luminous visions. Once you master this discernment, you will see a transformation in your actions. Those who act from fear rush, make mistakes, and burn out. Those who act from inner guidance are calm, decisive, and their outcomes endure, not because they are more intelligent, but because they are connected to a wisdom greater than themselves. Prophetic imagination and inner guidance are not rare gifts bestowed on the few. They are universal endowments available to all. The question is whether you are quiet enough to recognize them and brave enough to trust them. When you do, life no longer feels like a maze of dead ends, but a journey where every step is illuminated. And in each of those steps, you'll realize you are never alone, for the compass of imagination and the map of inner guidance are always with you. Love dissolves social fear when love becomes your state of being. Boundaries vanis, interactions are transformed, and inner freedom emerges. The fear we experience in social situations does not stem from the gaze of others, nor from the words spoken around us. It arises from a deeper inner separation, a fracture within ourselves, where we detach from the great stream of life and begin to believe that we are small, vulnerable, and dependent on external approval for our sense of worth. Every glance, every word becomes a mirror reflecting our own inner lack, causing us to tremble as if we are not already whole. But in truth, these worries are nothing more than illusions born from the absence of love, especially the love we withhold from ourselves and from life itself. Love, when lived as a state of being, has the power to dissolve all these illusions. Love is not merely a fleeting emotion, but a foundation, a radiant energy that permeates our thoughts, our actions, and our every interaction. When your heart is full of love, the boundary between you and others begins to dissolve. You no longer stand opposite the world, waiting to be judged, but instead, you recognize that both you and the other are simply reflections of the same divine current, and when the illusion of separation falls away, fear has no ground on which to stand. Consider a simple moment standing before another with an open heart. In that moment, you no longer worry about what they think, because you clearly perceive that you and they are sharing the same energetic field. When love is present, there is no need for defense and no need for validation. Every word, every glance from another becomes an opportunity to extend peace rather than absorb fear. This is the true meaning of inner freedom, a freedom not dependent on changing society or circumstances, but born from your return to love as your guide. In reality, many people are imprisoned by their fear of being judged, to the point they no longer dare to live authentically. They suppress their ideas, choke their emotions, and wear masks just to be accepted. But that is not life. It is merely survival inside an invisible prison. Love is the key that unlocks that prison. When you love yourself, you no longer need approval to feel worthy. When you love others, their gaze no longer threatens you. It becomes a mirror through which you discover more of your true self. The power of love also lies in its ability to transform the atmosphere itself. A person steeped in fear spreads tension throughout an entire room. But one who is anchored in love can soften the entire space. You may recall a moment when someone simply smiled and the entire energy of the room shifted. That was no miracle. It was the natural effect of love. Wherever love resides, fear cannot take root. It is essential to emphasize. The kind of love we speak of here is not emotional dependency, nor a temporary infatuation. It is a state of being a decision to live from the center of your true self. When led by this love, you still have healthy boundaries, and you still discern right from wrong, but you no longer act from fear. You can decline an invitation or walk away from a relationship, not out of anxiety, but out of clarity and inner peace. In practice, this means that whenever you face social tension, you pause and remind yourself that love is stronger than all else. You might imagine a radiant light flowing from your heart, enveloping both yourself and the person in front of you. When you do this, you will find that judgmental eyes are no longer daggers, but mere whispers in the flow of energy. Instead of reacting, you respond with calm presence, and gradually you train yourself to replace the reflex of fear with the reflex of love. And soon you will begin to witness a profound shift. Situations that once made you anxious now become opportunities to radiate peace. People who once made you tense now sense your gentleness. You no longer strive to prove your worth, because you yourself become the evidence of a higher energy. This is freedom, a freedom that no one can take away, because it is not built upon society, but upon the sacred foundation of love itself. Love dissolves social fear, not merely as a lofty ideal, but as a deeply practical way of living. It allows you to walk into the world with courage, because no matter what anyone says or thinks, you remain whole in love. It brings you into deeper communion with your true self, because when fear dissolves, you finally dare to live fully and create boldly, and most of all, it enables you to become a light for others still trapped in the shadow of judgment. In every moment, you are offered a choice, the choice between fear and love. When you choose love, you not only liberate yourself, but you begin to carve a path for a more compassionate world. For collective fear can only dissolve when individuals return to the love that lives within them. And when that happens, the world is no longer a stage where you must be afraid, but a sacred arena in which you are free to express your divine essence, shining in the unity of love and life, prosperity and uncertainty, and the golden tomorrow. Prosperity is a state of consciousness combined with deliberate action, sustained by gratitude and guided by the inner voice to lay each brick for a golden future in the present moment. In times of uncertainty, when the economy trembles and the news floods our minds with worry, people often assume that prosperity is no longer possible. They look around, see crisis, and believe every door has been shut. But the truth is, prosperity never comes from outer conditions. It always begins within as a state of consciousness. Whoever can hold their mind steady, who plants within it the image of sufficiency and peace, has already begun to create prosperity, even when the world around them is still shaking. Prosperity is the union of two essential elements. The first is consciousness, for if your mind is consumed by worry, you are unconsciously sowing seeds of lack, and the only harvest can be more lack. But when you nurture an awareness of abundance, when you affirm again and again that God is my source, that life is ever flowing with richness, then you are planting the true seeds of wealth. The second element is deliberate action. Consciousness opens the vision. Action lays the bricks A farmer who sows but does not tend will never reap, and one who acts without direction will simply spin in circles. When the two come together, prosperity becomes a grounded and inevitable process. The secret to sustaining the flow of prosperity is gratitude. Gratitude transforms little into enough, turns hardship into opportunity, and makes the present moment the foundation of tomorrow. When you are grateful, you send a signal to the universe that you already have, and by the law of reflection, life will bring you more opportunity, more support, more resources. A person without gratitude will always feel poor, even if they own much, but a grateful heart will live richly, even with little in hand. This state of being is the true energy that magnetizes abundance. Prosperity in uncertainty is not about avoiding crisis. It is about using crisis as the raw material for growth. When the world is unstable, those who remain internally anchored will rise because they possess the clarity to perceive opportunity hidden within the storm. Those who drown in fear will miss it all, but the calm and centered will see every sliver of light between the shadows. They act not out of panic, but out of clarity, and it is this clarity that turns their steps into foundations for a golden future. Every day, we place a brick for tomorrow. That brick is our thought, our emotion, our action in the now. If today you plant the image of fear and confusion, tomorrow can only be built as a wall of unrest. But if today you sow images of faith and sufficiency, paired with small but intentional steps, then you are laying the foundation of a lasting fortress. The future is never shaped by sudden miracles. It is shaped by countless quiet decisions made in the now, repeated, reinforced day by day. The golden tomorrow is not a distant destination waiting for you at the end of some perfect path. It is being woven here and now, in each present moment. Every time you listen to your inner voice, you receive guidance on where to place the next brick. Every time you choose gratitude over complaint, you strengthen the ground beneath you. Every time you act with purpose, you add a new level to your tower of prosperity. And when you persist, the golden tomorrow ceases to be a vague hope. It becomes a natural outcome. One vital truth must be remembered. Prosperity is not limited to money. It is the state of a soul that knows it is enough, of a mind that is creative, of a spirit that can perceive and seize opportunity regardless of circumstance. A person can live through the storm of crisis and still be wealthy in love. Rich in creativity and rooted in deep faith. And these invisible treasures are the true seeds of outer abundance. When the inside overflows, the outside becomes a reflection, not a struggle. Finally, remember this: the inner voice is always present, always ready to lead. It does not shout, it does not force. It whispers like a gentle stream. When you learn to listen, the way becomes clear. When you dare to trust, strength arises. And when you bring the two together, prosperity becomes not a possibility, but a certainty. So instead of waiting for some distant day when all the conditions are perfect, begin now. Sow the consciousness of abundance. Act with intention. Cultivate the power of gratitude. Return to the voice within. Each of these is a simple brick, but one by one, they build your golden tomorrow. A tomorrow no longer shaped by uncertainty, but radiant with the unshakable foundation of faith and spiritual clarity. After all is said and done, you will come to see that the future has never been your enemy. It is merely the mirror that reflects the seeds you sow today. If you plant fear, you will reap unrest. But if you plant faith, love, and gratitude, tomorrow will blossom into a field of golden abundance. You do not need to wait for a miracle from the outside, for the miracle has already been placed in your hands from the very beginning. Return to the still center within. Let your imagination and inner guidance lead the way, and act each day with conscious clarity. When you live in this manner, you do not merely transform yourself, you become a light that illuminates the path for others. The golden tomorrow is not a dream. It is the reality you are building, moment by sacred moment, right here in the now.